we find ourselves 15 years into relatively determined industrial policy launched in 2007, and we remain relatively hard-pressed to find evidence of the success. Before we dive into the detail of the morning, I'll introduce you to the panel in a moment. Let me first introduce you to me. I'm Adrian Saville. I'm professor at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, and I look after the Center for African Management and Markets, which is the author of the report that sits behind this morning's event. To give you some very brief background and context for, I suspect, almost everyone, if not everyone in the room, GIBS needs little introduction. GIBS ranks as one of the top business schools in South Africa and on the continent, and ranks globally amongst peers. The Center for African Management and Markets is one of 3 centers based at the school, where we have a mandate that is designed around the words build, connect, and do. And build is about building capability and capacity. Connect is network, from microeconomic to macroeconomic network. And do is a attribute that sits close to the heart of GIBS, where GIBS describes itself as a school close to business. And so what we are always insistent on is that our work doesn't land up in archives and journals. It's important that it finds its way, it has the status and stature, that it has journal standing, but that it is measured by its impact and its contribution. Over the years, the Center for African Management and Markets has had a number of valuable and powerful partnerships. It's resulted in work that perhaps you will be familiar with, including our 6-factor model, the Visa Africa Integration Index, the Investec GIBS Savings Index, and then the Building Africa report, and then today's work, which looks at the cement production against a backdrop of cement imports as a competing substitute. I'll come back to this in a moment. The real context for this conversation, I think, is much more than just the cement industry. It's a far broader conversation. If we take the performance of the South African economy over recent periods, and here I'm reaching back far enough that we're not looking at something anecdotal or transient, but we've got a long history here in terms of economic and social performance that is a word that you never want to hear in relationships, that is disappointing. You can deal with anger. Disappointment is much harder to wrestle with. It was supposed to get at least a chuckle. I'm sharing with you here 3 charts. The one is per capita income adjusted for purchasing power parity. The famous, or perhaps in some circles, infamous Michael Porter of Harvard Business School says this is one of the easiest ways to assess, or immediate ways to assess, a country's progress and performance. That is your income growing? Is it growing against peers? And is it improving adjusted for purchasing power parity? South Africa on the far left-hand chart is the turquoise line, and you can see us losing pace against upper middle income and LATAM countries by way of comparator. This is unimpressive. This is what I would call being left behind. In the middle chart, staying with Porter, he suggests that an easy way to assess a country's industrial competitiveness is to look at its share of world exports. And South Africa's share of world exports has been falling for decades. I want to underline this is not a 1994 observation, that the decline in exports has been going on since the 1980s. And it is persistent. It is almost uninterrupted. And on the third chart, this is the deficit between South Africa's policy promise and South Africa's economic outcome. The height of the turquoise columns is the intended economic growth by design under each of the policy programs. GIA as GISA, NGP, NDP. Mboweni was not a policy program, but a firm set of proposals of what South Africa could achieve. And at least here we have one attribute that is desirable, and that is consistency. We we continually talk about a 5%-ish economic growth proposal. However, under GEAR, we produce about 3.5, as GISA, just a nudge over 3. NGP, we sag below 3. NDP, it's 1. And if we include the COVID years, which perhaps is unfair, that number falls to 0. This is a yawning deficit between ambition and outcome. And it's against that backdrop that we meet this morning and we produce this report. The chart that I show you here, I would venture, is one of the biggest missing ingredients in South Africa's industrial policy. But it's not my place to venture this as a solo voice. We've got an esteemed panel this morning that will challenge and contribute to this. But one of the biggest drivers of economic growth and industrial performance across countries and through time is gross domestic fixed investment. And in the case of South Africa, that number is missing in action. To achieve 5% economic growth, I would venture that you need in the order of 25% as a share of GDP. Our number sits at 15%. And increasingly, that 15% is being hollowed out because budget deficit is consuming a growing share of South Africa's savings pool. So this starts to take us in the direction of what economists refer to as structural constraints. And if we stay with that language of structural constraints, this chart shows you South Africa's export performance. And 1970 looks like 1985, looks like 2005, looks like 2020, with one exception, the automotive sector, which perhaps can be pointed to as a champion in South Africa's industrial performance. If we are to go that far and point to it as a champion, one would have to, it's hard to escape the conclusion that whilst it might be a champion, it is an exception. It's not the rule. And that South Africa remains overarchingly a commodity exporter, notwithstanding these very bold policy endeavors. When we zoom in on the manufacturing sector, we find a steady hollowing out or erosion. In 1990, manufacturing made up 25% of GDP. It now makes up 13% of GDP. That's a halving in the contribution over around 30 years. That the profitability of the sector has been in steady decline. 2005, 7% total income measured by profitability, now sitting at 2%. That the manufacturing sector has steadily lost jobs, 1.4 million jobs in 2005, 1.1 million jobs in 2021. And that if we zoom in even closer and look at subcomponents of the manufacturing cluster, there is only one sector, petroleum and chemicals. We've got some Sasol people here today. There is only one sector, petroleum and chemicals, that has made an advance over this 15 years. Every other sector has experienced decline. Something is wrong. Something is missing. That's the backdrop to the report that we build for PPC in considering the socioeconomic impact of substituting cement production, a historically vibrant domestic industry, with cement imports. How does it happen? Where does it come from? What does it mean? Do we watch? Do we hope? Or do we do something about it? The report is available for you this morning. There is a QR code on the flyer that's distributed when you came in this morning. There's a QR code on the back. You can use that QR code to access the report. And this report delves into the tools that we have used to assess the social and economic impact. Essentially, this can be distilled into two branches. The one is a quantitative set of tools under a social accounting matrix, where we have endeavored to work out the different components and influences, the linkages, the backward and forward linkages, and the spillovers associated with the industry, recognizing that whilst any industry in and of itself might be regarded as relatively small, once you start to include the multipliers and the linkages, you get a true sense of the size and the contribution of the sector. By that measure, PPC and the cement industry make a substantial contribution to the South African economy and to South African society. PPC alone, 8.8 billion economic value added, 15,897 full-time equivalent jobs, with 3.2 billion contributed to labor income. This is a significant social contribution by any measure. We then take the work further and we ask the two questions. What happens to these social and economic numbers if we replace domestic production with imports? That was one part of the work. And the second part of the work was to dive deep into community, with community engagement, community interviews and site visits, establishing what the impacts of this are likely to be at the level of families and households and employees, by visits to Hercules, New Brighton, and Piketberg in Gauteng, the Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape. I'll move on. The details of the report are available for you. You can look at each of the different elements. I've tried to be quick, I've tried to be brief, but hopefully in giving you this, I've also been robust in giving you a sense. One of the things that is particularly alarming, and I'll close here, in talking to South Africa's social and industrial structure, is it's hard to escape the conclusion that South Africa is stuck, that that innovation and agility, that immunity is absent. And when we ask at the level of the household, what is your likelihood of finding a displaced job? What is your likelihood of finding a replacement job for your displaced job? This doesn't look like a bright conversation. This looks like a conversation that instead turns to a new wave of permanently unemployed in South Africa, that there is no substitute or replacement for this.